Good afternoon, everyone. I call to order this regularly scheduled Ways and Means Committee. My name is Abdi Warsami. I'm the chair of the committee, and I have with me Council members Cunningham, Fletcher, and Council Vice President Jenkins. And let the record reflect that we have a quorum and are able to do our business today. First of all, we'll look at item number 1 on our agenda, which is a public hearing. And this is a Civil Service Commission appointment, considering the reappointment of the Executive Committee of Ellen McVeigh, seat number 1, for a 3-year term beginning March 1st, 2019 and ending February 28th, 2022. And I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to this topic today? Is Ms. McVeigh here? Anyone? Anyone? Last chance. And we have been joined by Council Member Palmisano. Thank you for coming. Again, anyone? Anyone? Okay. Seeing no person wishing to speak or seeing no additional persons wishing to speak, I will close the public hearing and move this item for approval. All those in, is there any discussion on this item? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The item has been approved. Next, we will look at our consent items, and we have 44 items for consideration today, and I will read up these items. Item number 2 on our agenda is the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Violence Against Women Act Stop Special Program Grant for implementation of a pilot domestic assault response team. Item number 3 is a legal settlement, Asha Hirsi versus Adam Thornston and the City of Minneapolis. Item number 4 is a legal settlement, Megan Johnson versus Stefan Courtois. Item number 5 is a legal settlement, Scott Peterson versus City of Minneapolis. Item number 6 is another legal settlement, claim of Kerry Maraz. Item number 7 is a legal settlement, claim of William Craig. Item number 8 is a legal settlement, claim of Timothy Klug. Item number 9 is a legal settlement, claim of Michael McCarthy. Item number 10 is a legal settlement, claim of Patrick Parker. Item number 11 is a legal settlement, claim of Anthony Volson. Item number 12 is a legal settlement, claim of Troy Nordstrom. Item number 13 is a legal settlement claim of Joel Sandberg. Item number 14 is a legal settlement claim of Kyle Huggett. Item number 15 is a legal settlement claim of Rico McKinney's. Item number 16 is a grant from the Minnesota Historical Society for Minneapolis Modern Era Context Study and Report. Item number 17 is an appointed position in the Health Department. This is the Director, Office of Violence Prevention. Item number 18 is an appointed position in the City Clerk's Office, and this is a role of Assistant City Clerk. Item number 19 is a contract with Turner Public Affairs, LLC, for legislation representation services. Item number 20 is the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee appointment. Item number 21 is an assignment of arbitrage rebate services contract to A.W. Smith, LLC. Item number 22 is a bid for the Target Center escalator refurbishing. Item number 23 is a rebid for Curry Maintenance Facility Electrical Systems Modification Project. Item number 24 is a lease with Colliers International for Elections and Voter Services Office and Warehouse. Item number 25 is a lease with Extra Space Management, Inc. for Minneapolis Animal Care and Control Equipment. Item number 26 is a contract with Visual Communications, Inc. for signage and wayfinding design services for the Public Service Building Project. Item number 27 is a contract amendment with Meyer, Scherer, and Rockcastle, Ltd. for architect and engineer of record design services for the Public Service Building Project. Item number 28 is a contract amendment with Architectural Wall Systems, LLC for design, assist, and unitized envelope system services for the Public Service Building Project. Item number 29 is the amendment with Adolphson and Peterson Construction for the East Side Storage and Maintenance Facility Project. Item number 30 is a gift acceptance for from the Harvard Kennedy School for travel-related expenses to the Project on Municipal Innovation. And item number 31 is grants from the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, the Metropolitan Council's Tax Base Revitalization Account, and Hennepin County's Environmental Response Fund for the Fall 2018 Brownfield Grant Round. Item number 32 is an agreement with Optum Insight, Inc. for insurance eligibility verification services. Item number 33 is a lease agreement with Special School District Number 1, Minneapolis Public Schools for the school-based clinic program. Item number 34 is a contract amendment with Aspen Psychological Consulting for psychological evaluation for 911 personnel. Item number 35 is a contract with Sherry Moldenhauer for multi-jurisdictional task force on opioids consultation. Item number 36 is the Grand Street Northeast Street Resurfacing Project approval and assessment. Item number 37 is a Sanford Area Residential Street Resurfacing Project approval and assessment. Item number 38 is 10th Avenue Bridge Tunneled Water Main Project bond amendment and appropriation. Item number 39 is a bid for ready-mix concrete. Item 40 is a bid for bituminous mixtures. Item number 41 is a bid for Fridley Softening Plant 2019 Masonry Repair Project. Item number 42 is a bid for 8th Street Reconstruction Project. Item number 43 is a bid for 10th Avenue Water Main River Crossing Project. Item number 44 is a bid for Hennepin Avenue Sanitary Sewer Replacement Project. Item number 45 is a license agreement for shared motorized food scooter operations in 2019. And that was a mouthful. And so I'll move approval of moving all 44 items for consideration. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing no go ahead. Any discussion? No? Okay. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. These items have been approved. And now, finally moving to item number 46, or the receive and file item. What we have been waiting for all afternoon is the 2019 assessment report. Receiving and filing the City Assessor's 2019 Assessment Report. And here we have our City Assessor, Patrick Todd, to present this report to us. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, Patrick Todd, Minneapolis City Assessor. Thank you for allowing us some time to present the information that we just finished compiling for the 2019 assessment. This is very timely, this is very market specific, and timely in the sense that valuation notices should be in the mail. They're currently at the printers. They'll be delivered this week, and we expect to see valuation notices maybe as early as Friday, but for sure the first part of next week. So this information, again, is we felt it was necessary so that you can feel informed when taxpayers are calling, your constituents are calling, and you have a good idea of what we were doing in our department. And so I have some data here that we'd like to share, and we will be able to share more information on award specific a little bit later on. First of all, I want to just thank a couple people. In fact, I need to actually introduce who's with me. I do have with me is Rebecca Malmquist, is the director of the Assessor's Office. I also have Denise Lingwell. She's a residential supervisor. I have Saray Garnett-Huhuli, who's also another residential supervisor, and Nancy Wojak, who is our manager of assessment services. None of this report could have been done without them. I actually am presenting all their work for the most part, and I really appreciate that. This assessment, the 2019 assessment, is after taking a look at, we've actually revalued 125,000 parcels for 2019. This the reassessment was really based on inspecting 25,000 properties, thereabouts, which is called our equalization. By statute, we have to look at 20% of the city. It's verifying and validating around 5,000 to 6,000 sales. We really dug into a lot of what was going on to get a better understanding to make sure we're really using market transactions and having a good information on, what sold, what were the characteristics, what were the conditions, and things like that. Bad information in is bad information out. It's also looking at thousands and thousands of permits. You know, in our assessment, we always have to do a permit add, and then we calculate, is the market going up when we subtract out the new improvements. So my staff are working with in ELMS and trying to extract out every permit that's going to be adding value. And by adding value, it's really, does it add value, does it not change value, or does it subtract value? So are we there taking a look at something that was wrecked? So, and these numbers that I'll be presenting aren't finalized. They won't be finalized probably till June when the state board does finalize our assessment, but they're really, really close. There's things like combinations, divisions that would not be in here. Utility values, which are state assessed values, they're not in here yet, but it's really what we would consider our final product with a few small exceptions. For the most part, 125,000 parcels. The valuation notices are going out. The values that we're giving today are actually the basis for the 2020 taxes. A lot of times people forget that. The tax notices are in the mail right now that Hennepin County is mailing out. People will see our valuation notice, they'll see the taxes, and they think that they're linked, and they're absolutely not linked. And I actually have a slide that shows the copy of the valuation notice and how Hennepin County addresses that. It'll be helpful. And then last but not least, the sales period that we based our 2019 assessment really starts in October of 17 and concludes September of 18. So we're always considered historians. We're always looking to see what happened and then establishing values as of January 2nd based on what was going on in the past, not what's going on in the future. That is statutorily defined for us. So, and it's not like we put blinders on. As we see things change, then we jump on that. But for the most part, we really focus on what happened and then establishing the assessment. Overall tax base growth, from 2015 to 2019, we had about $40 million, or $40 billion, excuse me, in 2015. From between 15 to 16, we went from 40 to 43, which is about an 8.8% growth. From 16 to 17, it went up to 47 billion. 17 to 18 is 52, and then today it's around 55.1 billion. Between 15 and 16, we were averaging 8.8, 9%, 9.6%. This recent year, from 18 to 19, we pulled back. I wouldn't say we pulled back, but the market showed us it's probably not as heated as it was. So our overall tax base growth is about 5.2 from 18 to 19. So interesting statistic. When we break it down by property type grouping, this is kind of interesting. So when we look at the city of Minneapolis, we have 60% of our tax base is green, which is the residential. If you look at the blue, the upper right-hand quadrant, 21.8% is our commercial industrial tax base, and then the orange is at 17.5, and that's our apartment tax base. So we're overwhelmingly a residential city. When we look at tax capacity, where do we generate our tax dollars? You'll take a look, and actually it's interesting. So we have 60% of our tax base is residential, but of the property tax burden, they pay 48% of the tax base. When we look at the commercial is at 21% of our tax base is commercial industrial, yet the tax capacity that's bringing in taxes is at 34.58. And then last but not least would be the apartments. They were at 17% of our tax base is apartments, but yet the revenue generated, or the property tax burden, I should say, for apartments is 16.6. And so, and this last slide just kind of puts those side by side, and it's just kind of an interesting statistic. And these I don't want to say irregular. The property tax burden is really established over at the legislature. So the legislature would say residential properties are going to pay 1%. Commercial properties are going to pay 1.5% up to 150,000, and 2% after that. And so if you're affordable housing, you're at 0.75. If you're an apartment, you're at 1.25. They're establishing who pays more, who pays less, and this is really shows how that plays out when you start applying it times the value. So we're going to get into a little bit more of some statistical data for the next few slides. So we're going to look at the residential assessment for 2019. We break it out by the major categories that we would feel are major categories: condominiums, double bungalows, single family, triplex, and townhouses. You can see what we had for 2018 values and where we went up in 2019. How much of that was new construction? And then the last column is the net change, which is we subtract out all the new construction because we want to just see what was property growth. And if you add new construction, that's really not growth. That wasn't organic or market driven. That's, could be anything really. So we subtract out the new construction, and then the far column is Well, you know, if you're in your ward, you have condominiums, you know that as a tax base, we went up about 3%. If you're looking at single family, went up as a tax base citywide, 4.7%, not including new construction. Any questions?
Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you just clarify for me what you mean by residential versus what you mean by apartment in the previous slide? I'm trying to make sure I understand what, because I consider apartments to be residential, so I'll make sure I know what we mean. What's in the green part and what's in the orange part?
Sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Fletcher, the residential we would class, and it's really statutorily defined, and these are really broken down by the classification rates. So anything less than 4 units, the statutes would say, residential is 1, 2, 3, and anything more than 3 or more is apartment. And then all of a sudden the classification changes. So even though they are residential in nature, their use is residential, being used for housing, the number of units are actually driven, is the primary factor on that. So a good example, if we had 2 duplexes on one lot, that's actually going to be an apartment. That would have an apartment classification because you have 4 units. You'll have a single family home and a triplex. That now goes from a single family into an apartment classification. So it's all driven by the number of units.
So an owner-occupied condo would still be, if it's in a condo building with more than 3 units, would still be considered an apartment in this classification?
Let's see, can you rephrase that?
An owner-occupied condominium unit.
Right.
In a big building, say the Bridgewater.
Right.
Would be classified as an apartment for this analysis?
No.
Okay.
No.
Help me
Because
understand.
in a condominium, each condominium has its own PID, and so you would have to have, let's see here, what am I trying to explain? And for some reason, that's just not, yeah, go ahead. Rebecca Malmquist.
Chair Arsenowi and Councilmember Fletcher. So it would be defined as how many units are on a parcel. So each condominium unit has its own parcel number, and therefore it is considered residential. Now, if we had an apartment building, it would be an entire apartment building on one parcel. Therefore, it would have more than 4. Therefore, be classified as an apartment.
Okay. So rental buildings greater with 4 units or greater are what's included in that?
That's correct. 4 and more units.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize. I could not digest that question for some reason. So thank you. It's pretty straightforward, though.
I was going to ask that as well.
So if we dig a little bit deeper into statistics, these statistics that we're going to be going through over the next couple of days, they're measures that are measuring the overall assessment, not only in the quality of the assessment, but the uniformity and whether it's a regressive or progressive assessment. These metrics are going to be, you'll be seeing these going forward because these are probably the best indicators for measuring what we do. It's also what the Department of Revenue uses to measure whether we're doing everything correctly and uniformly and by statute. It's also the metrics we're going to be using in our sales rate, or not our sales ratio, in our Results Minneapolis report. So these are numbers that, again, these are near and dear to our heart, but it's also what you're going to be following our progress going forward. So when we're looking at sales ratio statistics for, let's say, condominiums, we had 1,369 sales last year. So when we look at the median sales ratio of all those sales, which is the ratio is the relationship between the estimated market value divided by the sale price, comes up with the ratio of where your assessment is. You take all of those and you come up with a median ratio. That's 95.7. So, and by statute, we need to be between 90 and 95. And so, right when we're looking at condominiums and townhouses, we know that we're pretty rock solid on those values. We had what's called a coefficient of dispersion. The coefficient of dispersion is measures the uniformity of the assessment, and a COD of below 15 is ideal. And right now, if you take a look at the condominiums, we're at 7. And a PRD, which is a price-related differential, that measures the whether our properties are either progressive or regressive. And I'll just read you what an assessment is considered regressive if the high-valued properties are relatively underassessed compared to the low-valued properties. And on the reverse, the progressive is the high-valued properties are relatively overassessed or overvalued compared to the low-valued properties. So we're measuring, making sure that we're really uniform, that how we treat the lower-valued properties are the same as how we're treating the upper bracket homes, and all the way through the stratification evaluation. So when we take a look at the, so this is the data that we're looking at, my staff are looking at, my supervisors are looking at, the Department of Revenue is looking at, for making sure that we're fair and uniform throughout the city of Minneapolis. This is the median sale price as compared to the estimated market value. And this is an interesting statistic when we were looking at it, because if you take a look at it, the EMV, our EMV, which is the bottom line, is what we had for a median value each year compared to what the sale price and what properties were selling for. And as you can tell, we had a fairly significant gap between 2013, 14, or 12, 13, and 14. And then every year since then, we've gotten better and better because we're really spending more time analyzing the data. We're getting into more of the nitty-gritty. I think there's also a number of things I wanted to point out that are really important. One is I think that the market's also a little bit more stable than it was. We saw some really turbulent times coming out of the foreclosure market. We also are finding that when we're doing a better job of validating the sales, so it's better information is resulting in a better assessment. I'm also hiring really smart people that when we get turnover, I'm really impressed with these people that we're able to hire now. And last but not least, it's having enough staff to do good work. And I really mean that, because over the last few years, you've been generous to provide us with more staff. And the more time we have, the more staff we have, the better the overall assessment's getting to the point where really what's happening in the market is truly what's being reflected in the assessment today. And I could not always say that based on the statistical data. So. When we take a look at where we are as far as value changes, and this is near and dear, I'm sure, to a lot of the council members, in our overall residential market value changes, we had it's 0.48 actually saw values go down, so less than 0.5% saw a reduction in their values in our residential tax base for 2019. For 25.8% of the residential properties in Minneapolis saw no change in their values at all. So what those there in 18 is what they have there in 19. If you take a look at the green, we have 16.7, which is something greater than 0, but less than 5. And then you get into 28%, or the gold, I should say, goes 5 to up to 9, or 9.9, or just under 10. And then again, almost 20% went from 10% up to 15. And then greater than 20 is 7.6. No, the red now is 1.46. And then the 15 to 19 is 7.6%. So you kind of see, not everyone says, well, the assessor raises the values every year and values never go down. Actually, they do go down. But for the most part, we held values. We're in those neighborhoods and those values where our ratios were right at where we felt the market is. And then in those areas where we felt that the sales are still indicating that our assessed value is still too low, we moved them up. Here's a heat map that kind of shows really where the changes in values occurred in the city of Minneapolis.
There's a question.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Chair Warsame, but I think you are getting to my question. I was just going to ask about the geographical locations of the changes, but it looks like you're headed in that direction. So
All right, you ready?
I'll let you talk. Yeah. Thank you.
I have very good staff that planned this out. Thank you. And this map is rather small, but we can surely blow it up and send it out to each council member, and you can have it, and we can also provide it again digitally, so you can really zoom in on your wards as well. Any questions on?
Yeah, I have a question. So on the map, is it me or is it Ward 4 and 5 have had the highest increase?
Mr. Chair, you're right. Absolutely, wards 4 and 5 are seeing some of the larger statistical increases. I would not say that they have the largest dollar increase, but statistically, they're going up because the values of their homes are, if you take a look at the average median value, and I can actually, the next slide, I believe, shows that. It could be one or two after that. The median value is lowest in these wards, and so when you go up 15,000 or 20,000, statistically, that's a much larger percent than in other areas.
Is it because also that they have more single-family homes than compared to Ward 3 or 6 or 7?
Mr. Chair, I don't think that the density or the numbers of homes, I just think that right now that is the most affordable place to buy in Minneapolis. And I think that we're finding that that's where people are looking right now for home affordability.
Okay. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to dig a little deeper into that question because it feels a little bit alarming to see data that basically the wards with the largest concentrations of people of color are the wards that are experiencing the greatest property increases. We've had a lot of conversations about gentrification, but I think we're looking at a map that shows us something that we need to be responsive to. I'm particularly interested in this question of looking at all of the sort of turquoise no change on this map around Lake of the Isles and in a lot of the more affluent neighborhoods. That seems striking to me that there wouldn't have been any real estate value gains in any of those properties. So I guess I'm curious to hear your analysis about why you're finding what you found. Is there a relationship between the huge number of appeals that happened in the sort of turquoise quadrant of 13 there last year? Is this really, is our appeals process sort of subject, or is our assessment process sort of subject to people being able to aggressively game the system by making a lot of appeals? And are we seeing a reflection of the places that people don't make those appeals as often, seeing valuation gains now? Is the message that should be sent is that people in Ward 4 need to get over to your office and complain? Or how do you talk us through this? Because this feels a little bit, I want to make sure that we're understanding this data well.
Okay. Through the chair, Councilmember Fletcher, very good question. Very good question. There's a couple. I think sometimes this map doesn't tell the whole story. I think if we looked at this map over a series of 5 years, that would be more telling, because I would think that, from my knowledge, that some of these areas have been increased significantly. I think these maps are data driven. This is what, when we take a look at sales prices to our assessed value, these are measuring how close are we in these areas where we're seeing no change. Our assessed values are what people are paying for those particular properties. So I can't tell you that. I mean, the gaming of the system, because it's data driven and based on sales, it's not based on, or there's no correlation between the number of appeals that we had at the local board last year, which I would agree that probably there was a significant number of people that had appealed out of Ward 13. But again, we still, based on sales, said, we looked at enough sales in that ward to say there's no reason for us to move those values up. There was no reason to move them down. We're right where that market is today. So, but as far as your other question, when you're referring to in some of these areas of color, if these changes in color, the changes from year to year, are really a reflection of what a willing seller is willing to part with and what a willing buyer is paying for that. It would be more interesting to see homestead data. Are the people that are purchasing these things homesteaders, or are they non-owner occupants? I think that would be a more interesting statistic to track rather than the fact that somebody else is paying more. And I think that building wealth, we talk about building wealth in Minneapolis, and an increase in your market value is building wealth. So I wouldn't necessarily think it's always a negative to see an increase. But get to the core question, the data is telling us that people are buying these homes in these areas and are paying more, significantly more than what we have them assessed at today. So, but we would have, my staff and I would be absolutely happy to sit down with Annie and all the council members to have a deeper dive to make sure that there isn't any errors with the data. And Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So these are the aggregate changes by community. I think this kind of gets to the same question that you might have. It could be an alarming statistic. You'd find that in Ward 5, and let me go to the next slide, 'cause I think this is fairly self-explanatory. Where those numbers are changing significantly is just because of where we had the division on the dark blue was 10 or greater, and you'd see that in Ward 5, it was at 10.92. So depending if we would have cut it at 11, then they would have all been the same color. But in how we stratified which colors were going to represent how much change, that makes community number 5, which is Councilmember Ellison's area, I should say stand out more than the others. And I think it's just because it's off by, it's just a hair into the next color range is all. Did you want to? Okay, you want to come up? Okay.
Chair Borsami and Councilmember Fletcher, if I could just further speak to your question about the percent of increase in those areas. So when we begin our assessment process and reevaluation, we look at where our starting point is, and we look at that sales information. And the sales ratio, that number that we keep mentioning, that percentage number, was the lowest in those areas. So we knew that the market had to come up, the values had to come up most in those areas. Now, if we sit back and then we would look back at the adjustments that we made last year, you will see that there were larger increases down in, let's say, Ward 13 and like the Southwest community. We had larger increases down there last year. So it's really where the market's moving throughout the city at different times or during different years. So that's why we were seeing bigger increases in Wards 4 and 5 or the near North community and Camden communities this year. Thank you.
Any other questions? We try not to work in a vacuum. We do look at other data points that are outside our own data. We do rely on, or we do like to look at the MLS, the Multiple Listing Service. We do, when we take a look at what the information that they're providing to the general public and the real estate professionals and brokers, they said that in Minneapolis specific for real estate, for residential real estate, that the median sale price is $265, which is 8.8% over what the median was in January 2nd of 2018. The current asking price to sale price is at 100% still. Now, when you break it down by transaction, not everyone is at 100%, but on a median, that the price that people are listing for is what they're getting for them still today. And that was the exact same number as it was back in 2018. When we look at number of days in the market, the typical property is on the market 21 days before it sells. Last year at the same time, it was at 20 days. The number of supply of inventory on the market is 1.8 months, not even 2 months right now. And the reason why I point this out is because every one of these indicators tell us, for the most part, the market's either going up or just as strong as it's ever been. When people are getting 100% of their list price, when there's a undersupply of inventory on the market, when it's only taking 20 days or 21 days to sell a house. When a typical marketing time is usually, like I think 90 is what they would say would be more of an imbalance. So this really supported when we...
There's one question,
Sure.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Chair Warsami and Mr. Todd, I'm curious, can you help us understand better this indicator, month's supply of homes? I understand all the other ones are pretty straightforward, but a month's supply of homes, which is...
through the chair, Councilmember Palmisano, my understanding of that number of months supply, they take the number of properties currently listed. They look at, on the average, how many sales are occurring each month, and they go, well, based on how much inventory we have, if we don't add to it, and we're currently absorbing X number per month, it's going to take us 1.8 months to absorb every property on that listing. So they use it because as those months supply increase, they know that all of a sudden you're starting to you shift from a seller's market into a buyer's market because inventory is so plentiful.
I see. So then if it is, what point is that shift from a buyer's market to a seller's market? It seems like at a 1.0 mark, at a 2.0 mark?
Through the chair, Councilmember Palmson, I don't know. These are, I'd have to look into what they're quoting at this point in time.
Okay,
on
thank
that.
you.
Yeah. We're just going to jump into the commercial assessment. Our commercial assessment, we overall, in commercial, we went up. We saw 4.15 growth. That's not including new construction. That is just the market changing or appreciating from 18 to 19. And when we look at the industrial, we're up 3.81%, not including new construction. And when we look at those same metrics that we were looking at residential, we apply those same metrics across the board regardless of property type. We had 81 commercial sales. Our median sale price, or median sale ratio was 96.8. We had a COD of 13 and a PRD of 103. And you can see that the goal is under the COD is under 20 for the COD, and the PRD is between 97 and 103. Based on statistical data, they would say that the fewer the sales you have, the more skeptical or the more suspect those numbers are. So when you look at the industrial PRD and you would say 110, it's not too alarming that when you only have 8 sales in a city this large, they're probably not as uniform. And uniformity is what they look for. So overall, when we combine the commercial industrial, we had a total of 89 sales, and we have 103.3 in the PRD and a 96.3 in the median. One of the last property types is the apartments, so we went up 7.87% overall, not including new construction. And when we take a look at the sales ratio statistics, we had 116 apartment sales in 18, or during that sales period. We had an overall 94.39 overall sales ratio for apartments. Our COD was at 10, and our PRD is 101. Again, very, very good statistics when the Department of Revenue looks at the quality of our work overall.
Thank you. We have a question from Councilmember Fletcher.
Sure.
Mr. Todd, have you done a similar geographic breakdown on apartment assessments? I'd be curious to know which parts of the city values are moving in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get that for you as soon as we can. Do you have a deadline that you would like us to have it by, or as soon as we can? Okay, just. And that, for the most part, concludes our number crunching for the presentation. I'll just do a couple more slides, and then we're done for the day. The Department of Revenue, no, not the Department, Hennepin County produces the tax statements and then does the tax collection, but in our valuation notices this year, let me put it this way, they color code values year after year. So last year was red, this year's purple. So when you look at the valuations notice, when you're looking at the truth and taxation later on this year, and when you look at the tax statement next year, they're all going to be purple. So when we get valuation notices go out, they're going to receive a purple one. When they get their tax statement this year, it's going to be red. My staff are in tune now that they say, you know, which tax notice are you looking at? Well, it's red. Well, you're trying to compare your purple statement, which is today's value, with today's taxes, which we need to go grab your red valuation statement, and we can then have this conversation, because it's really difficult. It's a very difficult concept to understand. So kudos to Hennepin County for now color coding every one of them so you can consistently follow from your value to your truth and taxation to your actual tax statement. And again, they should be hitting the front doors shortly. They're color-coded. Please, this is the opportunity. Our office information is on every one of those notices. The appraiser responsible for that area is printed right there. So when the people call, taxpayers call, your constituents call, it's going right to the person that can answer that question. And again, anytime you get somebody calling directly to you, we hope that you send them our way. That's really what we're here for. And there are resources on our website as well for people to do some looking up of sales in their area, tax calculations and things like that, as well as we worked with the city clerk's office to develop a new online application for the local board to get people into the process more seamlessly and efficiently and and so that nobody gets dropped. Key dates, so we have our local board that convenes on April 3rd. So between now and April 3rd, as soon as those valuations are going to be hitting the door, people will have 3 to 4 weeks to look at their value, make any phone calls either to my office or to real estate professionals to figure out if that value seems fair and reasonable, and then make a determination on whether they want to go to the local board or not. Then we have a reconvene on May 7th, and then the Hennepin County has their Board of Appeals June 7th. The last slide, this shows next year's assessment. So this is a handy tool just because long before the local boards are done, long before the county boards are done, my staff will have finished their work and will be off doing door knocking and equalization. And so the Department of Revenue requires us to do 20% of the city, and so we have it mapped out which year we'll be doing it. So the blue will be those neighborhoods that we'll physically be mailing postcards to, door knocking in those areas, and making sure that we have all the information on those particular properties accurate. So if you have any questions, or if this is where phone calls are coming from, you'll have a good understanding of why certain neighborhoods are maybe more vocal with the phone calls. And with that, I stand for any new questions. Other than that, I also want to say thanks to really my staff who did outstanding work. The residential staff who have so much work to do, and then the leadership team that keeps it all together and pulls all the analysis and tells me what to say. So,
Yeah. Thank you very much. Councilmember Palmisano has a question, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Todd, there's no longer the Ward 4 council member here, so let me try to be proactive and harness a question that might be coming from him. Often in areas where you see dramatic change, so this year those increases seem to be in wards 4 and 5 in terms of single-family homes. You might tend to see a lot of appeals, and one of the changes that has been in the works for a while and just got funded in our last budget cycle was a system improvement, the CAMA system, that should help people who are concerned about their property values to have more information, some of the same information that you have, and can better see how the city is making their decisions. Yet I know there's an implementation timeline for such a program. Could you give us a sense of where you are in that, and when our customers or city residents might be able to go online and see some of those improvements through the new CAMA investment?
Sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Palmisano, we are at the contract negotiation phase, so the attorneys are working through the fine details of the contract. We are slated to start implementation Q4. We're looking at November of 19, and then it's about a 20-month implementation. So we're probably, I would say, for 2021, we're hoping to have either a side-by-side implementation, so we're going to be running it alongside ours to make sure that the values and are calculating correctly. But is that correct? Yeah. So 2021.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so that's the 2021 estimated market value statements that go out?
Yes. So we would be working with their developers, working with their implementation. The package that we have should be fairly straightforward to implement. There's very little customization that we're going to be going through. So yeah, our goal right now is on the 2021 value statements will be generated off the new CAMA system, which is, well, I can't say it, but the new CAMA system.
For year 2022 budget.
For taxes payable in 2022. Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
But let me just add on to that. As we're prepping for this new CAMA system, we are finding that there are some tools that we're developing beforehand so that when we come into the actual implementation, we're ready to go. So we're trying to be more proactive in how we're in prep. We're not waiting for them to start. We're not waiting to start. We're literally, and actually in that statistic that showed where our overall assessed value was in relation to market, we're getting closer and closer with some of the statistical tools that we're using on an ad hoc basis to really refine our assessment. So we're getting better. We're not sitting back waiting saying, well, because this old CAMA system isn't as efficient. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? First of all, thank you to Assessor Patrick Todd for a very informative presentation, and thank you to his staff for all the hard work they do. You're an essential department of our enterprise, so thank you for all the work you've done. And any further discussion? Seeing none, I move to receive and file item 46. All those in approval say aye.
Aye.
Those against? And that item has, will be received and filed. And having concluded our business, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.